stopped my childhood sweetheart, Ethan, from running away to the south with his white Moonlight, Emily, to work at a train station. I managed to convince him to come back and finish his studies. After graduating from a prestigious university, I married Ethan. His career flourished, and our life became comfortable and stable. On the day I gave birth, Emily was holding her wedding ceremony. Ethan abandoned me, even though I was in difficult labor, and rushed to her wedding, to steal the bride. The emotional blow broke me completely. My delivery went wrong, and both my baby and I died. Meanwhile, Ethan succeeded in taking Emily away, and they got married, living happily together. "Don't blame me, Sarah," Ethan said. "The one I've always loved is Emily. If you hadn't stopped me back then, Emily and I wouldn't have been separated for so many years. Now that she's pregnant, maybe it's better that you're gone. Don't resent us. This is what you owed us." When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn. The sounds of people bustling filled the air. I was standing at the same train station where Ethan had left years ago. He looked at me cautiously and shouted, "Sarah, don't stop me. Today I have to leave with Emily." Seeing the guarded look on his face, I felt only relief. I had returned just in time. In my previous life, I had begged him not to waste his potential. I'd said, "If you want Emily to have a good life, getting a degree is really important." He listened to my advice back then, but that made Emily board the train alone, heartbroken. Maybe from that moment on, he began to hate me to the bone. And I was foolish enough to pour my heart and soul into him, to give him my sincerity and my life. Now that I've lived again, I'll grant their wish and let them both go to hell together. "You really want to leave with her?" I asked coldly. Ethan replied firmly, "Yes, I won't let you stop me." "I'm not stopping you," I said evenly. "If that's your decision, then I wish you and Emily smooth sailing ahead." The pain of childbirth and the despair of losing my child still weighed heavy on my heart. I had already seen Ethan's true colors. Letting go of misplaced kindness, I chose to respect fate and stop interfering in other people's lives. Ethan froze for a moment, clearly surprised. You're not going to stop me? You're not going to tell my parents?" I answered decisively, "I'm hoping you both leave and never come back. Why would I tell anyone? I already paid the price for meddling in fate once. This time, I won't owe either of you anything." At that moment, a girl ran over from afar, dragging her suitcase. When she saw Ethan, her face lit up with joy, but when she noticed me, her expression instantly turned guarded. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" Emily asked warily. I stepped back a few steps. Back then, I had been ignorant and selfish, the one who broke apart two people who loved each other. In this life, they could cling to each other all they wanted. I didn't want any more entanglements with them. Looking straight at the two of them, I said calmly, "I just came to say goodbye, and to cut off whatever friendship I had with you, Ethan. Don't worry, I won't bother either of you again. I won't tell anyone about what you're doing. The train's about to leave," I added. "Good luck to both of you." Then I turned and walked away, not giving them a chance to say another word. Ethan clearly wanted to speak, but under Emily's expectant gaze, he hesitated and boarded the train. When I returned home, I began sorting out my situation. There was still 1 week left before the college entrance exam. My grades were excellent, but during the actual exam, I had severe stomach cramps and didn't perform well, only getting into a regular teacher's university. After graduation, I became a 12th grade teacher. Even so, I still couldn't let go of the regret over my failed exams from my previous life. I reviewed the college entrance exam papers from that year again and again, which had once made Ethan complain that I cared too much about winning and losing. But now, I finally had a chance to make up for that regret. I opened my textbooks and began to review according to the memories from my past life. While I was working on practice problems, a sharp scream suddenly pierced the quiet and interrupted my studying. It was Mrs. Johnson, Ethan's mother, from the house next door. She had finally discovered the note her son had left behind. I could hear her collapse emotionally, screaming in despair, before she ran to my house and began pounding furiously on my door. When I opened it, her face was twisted with anger. "Sarah, do you know that Ethan and one of your classmates ran away together? Where did they go?" I widened my eyes, pretending to be surprised, as if I had just found out. "What? I didn't know," I've been busy studying for the exams lately, so I haven't paid attention to Ethan. Did he really run away from home? Mrs. Johnson, who had been my mother-in-law in my past life, was a woman impossible to get along with. Before I married Ethan, she treated me like her own daughter. But after the wedding, she constantly criticized me, saying I didn't earn enough money, that I hadn't given her a grandchild yet, or that my education wasn't as good as Ethan's, because I didn't graduate from a top university like him. No matter what I did, she could always find something to pick apart. Now she was on the verge of losing her mind. He's about to take the college entrance exam, and he ran off with that girl? What the hell is he thinking? She shouted, her voice hoarse with fury. I watched her coldly, just as my parents returned home from work. After they understood the situation, they gently advised Mrs. Johnson to calm down and go look for Ethan instead of wasting time yelling. Only then did peace return to my home. Finally, the day of the college entrance exam arrived. I gathered my things carefully and got ready to head out. Just as I stepped outside, I saw Mr. Johnson, Ethan's father, standing by the door with a bag of breakfast in his hand. In my previous life, I had stomach pain during the exam and didn't perform well. To avoid that this time, I cooked my own breakfast early in the morning, carefully choosing fresh ingredients and sterilizing every utensil before eating. "Sarah," Mr. Johnson said, holding out the bag to me, "you're taking your college exams today. Ethan was being foolish running off like that, but I've watched you grow up. You're like a daughter to me too. Please take this breakfast and eat it, okay?" I looked at him silently, my thoughts drifting back to that same morning in my past life. Back then, Ethan had come over to my house with breakfast, saying that his father had woken up early to make it for both of us. Our families were close. Ethan had often eaten meals at our house since we were children. Back then, I wouldn't have thought twice about accepting the food. But now, things were different. Ethan had run away from home. The Johnson family was shrouded in tension and resentment. I was just the neighbor's daughter. I didn't believe that Mr. Johnson still had the heart to make me breakfast out of kindness. Still, I quietly accepted the bag and offered him a polite smile. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'll make sure to eat it all. Please don't worry too much about Ethan. Everything will be fine soon." Once I was out of the building, I slipped the breakfast bag into my backpack. Thanks to my memories from my past life, the college exam this time felt effortless. I was like a fish returned to water. I believed that in this life, I could finally make up for all the regrets of the last one. After finishing the exams, I didn't go straight home. Instead, I took the breakfast that Mr. Johnson had given me to a food safety laboratory and requested an official chemical test report. 2 weeks later, the exam results were announced. As I stared at my score, an immense sense of relief washed over me. My parents were overjoyed and wanted to go out and share the good news with everyone, but I stopped them. "Let's not make a big deal out of it right now," I said calmly. "The Johnsons are already going through enough. If we celebrate too loudly, it might make them uncomfortable." My father sighed emotionally. "My daughter's really grown up. You actually think about other people's feelings now." Of course, that wasn't it at all. I wasn't thinking for their sake. But I wasn't thinking for their sake. I was thinking about how to protect my own family. Yesterday, I received the official test results for the breakfast Mr. Johnson had given me. Just as I suspected, there was indeed a problem with it. It had been laced with a laxative. So that's why I'd suddenly suffered stomach pain during the college exam in my previous life. Now, at last, I had the proof. The thought made my blood run cold. I had been blind enough to marry Ethan, and his father, Mr. Johnson, had dared to harm a child. How vicious could a man be? If he ever found out that his scheme hadn't succeeded this time, who knew what desperate, deranged thing he might do next? I hadn't wanted to worry my parents. My plan was to quietly handle this matter myself, but since my exam results couldn't be hidden forever, I decided to tell them so they could stay alert. "Mom, Dad," I said that evening, "there's something I need to tell you." Meanwhile, the Johnson family was filled with gloom. Ethan still hadn't returned home. In the neighborhood, other families were celebrating their children's results with joy, but their house was silent and heavy with tension. Ethan had always been seen as the brightest student around, the kind of kid who was destined for Ivy League level schools. And now, instead of celebration, the Johnsons had only shame. Mrs. Johnson, bitter and resentful, couldn't hold her tongue. "It's just a second-tier college," she sneered at the neighbors. "What's there to brag about? If my son had taken the exam this year, Harvard or Yale would have been fighting to take him." Her words were sharp and mean, and they infuriated the parents around her. When she saw me walking by, she turned and called out, "Sarah, how did your exams go? Did you at least make it into a second-tier school?" I gave her a mild, indifferent smile and sighed. "I did okay. Nothing special." Mrs. Johnson's face brightened smugly. "Figures," she said. "Didn't you have diarrhea on the day of your exam?" I only smiled and said nothing, walking away from that petty drama. A day after the exam results were released, Ethan suddenly came home, with Emily beside him. He had only been gone for a month, yet he had already spent all the money he'd stolen from his parents. When he could no longer survive outside, he brought Emily back with him. "Mom, Dad, I'm home," Ethan announced proudly. "This is my girlfriend, Emily." Mr. and Mrs. Johnson were overjoyed to see their son return, but the moment they noticed Emily, their smiles vanished. Mrs. Johnson's expression turned dark. She rushed forward, ready to slap the girl, but Ethan quickly stepped between them. "Mom, what are you doing?" he shouted. "I love Emily, and she's pregnant." Mrs. Johnson froze, then let out a wail and sank to the floor, crying hysterically. "You ran away and skipped the college entrance exams, and now you come back with a pregnant girl? You've completely disgraced us. What's so good about her? She's just a foolish girl who ran off with a boy at her age. She's not even half as decent as Sarah next door. At least that girl has a clean background." Emily's face turned red with humiliation, and she looked as if she might cry. Seeing that, Ethan's heart ached, and he immediately lashed out at his mother. "Mom, stop saying that. Emily and I truly love each other. What's wrong with that? Sarah's just a neighbor and a friend. How could she ever compare to Emily? Emily's carrying my child now. You're going to be grandparents. Shouldn't you be happy? Emily is my true love. She's the only one I'll ever be with in this life." Mr. Johnson was so furious that he picked up a broom, ready to hit his son. Mrs. Johnson rushed to stop him, shouting, "You ungrateful brat, we searched for you everywhere for a whole month. You nearly drove us insane with worry. You're only 18. What do you even know about true love?" But they still didn't understand their son. Ethan was the type of person who grew more defiant the more others opposed him. "So what if I'm 18? He shot back. "I love Emily, and she loves me. I've never been able to make my own choices in life, but this time I will. This time, I'm making my own decision." While chaos erupted in the Johnson household, something entirely different was happening next door. A group of admissions officers from Harvard University and Yale University arrived at my house. "Is this the residence of Sarah Evans?" one of them asked. Hearing the commotion, the Johnsons and the neighbors rushed out to see what was happening. "What's going on here?" someone asked. "We're from the admissions offices of Harvard and Yale," one of the officers said proudly. "Sarah Evans is this year's top scorer in the entire city. We're here to personally recruit her." Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief. My mother hurried to open the door, beaming with excitement. "Please, come in. Yes, this is Sarah's house." Mrs. Johnson suddenly let out a loud, strangled cry. Mrs. Johnson completely broke down. Her son hadn't taken the college entrance exam, had brought home a pregnant girlfriend instead, and now the girl next door, me, turned out to be the top scorer in the city. "Mr. Johnson, what the hell are you doing with your life?" she screamed at her husband. "How could Sarah next door be the top scorer? How is that even possible?" Just then, my father arrived, accompanied by the police. He pointed directly at Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, who were sitting on the floor in shock. "Officers," my father said coldly, "these two are the ones who drugged my daughter's breakfast." The Johnsons tried to protest, but the police didn't give them a chance. Given the seriousness of the accusation, the officers restrained them and escorted them straight to the station for questioning. The university admissions officers, realizing the situation was serious, politely said they'd come back the next day to finalize my enrollment and let our family handle the matter first. I hadn't known they would visit today, and I felt apologetic as I saw them out. Then I quickly followed my father to the police station. At the station, my father presented the hallway security footage showing Mr. Johnson handing me the breakfast, along with the official test report from the food lab. He had also called in several neighbors as witnesses, those who'd heard Mrs. Johnson mocking me that day about having diarrhea during the college exam. With the evidence and witness statements lined up, everything was crystal clear. "Why did you put laxatives in Sarah's breakfast?" one of the officers asked sternly. "The evidence is conclusive." Mr. Johnson stayed silent, his face stiff. It was Mrs. Johnson who first tried to deny it. "There were no laxatives. We must have mixed it up by accident. We didn't know that part of the breakfast had been contaminated." The officer wasn't having it. He tapped his pen against the table and said coldly, "You'd better cooperate and tell the truth. You're lucky nothing serious happened to the girl. If she had suffered real harm, you'd both be facing over 15 years in prison." At that, Mr. Johnson suddenly laughed, a low, deranged laugh. "That Sarah girl has always scored higher than my son in every exam. Her father already outranks me at work. How could I stand seeing his daughter surpass my son again?" The officer frowned and glanced at my father. It turned out both of them worked at the same government office, my father as the department head, while Mr. Johnson was just a regular employee. My father had always thought they were good friends. Otherwise, he never would have bought a house in the same neighborhood on the same floor. Mr. Johnson continued in a defiant tone, "So what if I admit it? It was just a little laxative. She didn't get hurt, did she? Don't think I don't know the law. The most I'll face is a civil fine." His shamelessness made my father's face flush with rage. He was about to charge forward and hit the man, but I stopped him. "Dad, this is the police station," I said firmly. I looked at Mr. Johnson with cold disdain. I always said Ethan was a fool who acted without thinking. Turns out he takes after his father. Then I added, "You're right about one thing. It's only a civil matter. But that day, your actions caused me serious psychological trauma. I've been examined at the hospital. My mental injury is significant, and the treatment won't be cheap. So let's settle this. Pay me $100,000 in damages, and I'll drop the matter." Mrs. Johnson let out a scornful laugh. "What nonsense are you talking about? $100,000? You think you can just say that out loud and make it true? I'm telling you now, we won't give you a single cent." I smiled faintly. "Fine. Then wait for the court summons. You can explain yourselves to the judge instead of yelling at me." Ethan stood nearby, pale and lost. He was just an 18-year-old boy, watching his parents get taken away by the police, completely unable to process what was happening. "Sarah, this must be a misunderstanding," he said weakly. "My parents would never do something like that." Emily quickly chimed in, clinging to his arm. "That's right. Your families have known each other for years. This has to be a mistake." I gave them both a cold, mocking smile. "Ethan, your father already confessed. What misunderstanding are you talking about?" "Sure, our families are neighbors. That's true. But maybe you should listen more closely to what your father just said. Or are you worried that if he pays me $100,000, you won't have money left to raise your child?" Then I turned to Emily. "And you, don't get too comfortable. You're not even married into their family yet, and you're already defending them? Maybe you should think about whether they even want that baby you're carrying." My words hit home. Emily's face went pale, her hands trembling as she pointed at me, speechless with anger. You what?" Emily stammered, her face pale with fury. "Maybe you should worry about yourself before telling me what to do." Mrs. Johnson stood off to the side, her face dark as soot. She clearly didn't want to continue the argument. Knowing that these people weren't worth my time, I didn't bother with them any longer. When I got home, my father immediately hired an excellent lawyer to handle the entire case. He submitted my hospital's psychological evaluation along with all the evidence, demanding full compensation. Over the next few days, our family packed in a hurry and moved away. The Johnsons were all lunatics, and now that we were enemies, it was safer to leave early, before anything worse happened. After what had transpired, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson were deeply ashamed but couldn't bear to let their only son's bloodline drift away. Reluctantly, they agreed to let Emily stay. Emily had been an orphan since childhood. Her grandmother had raised her, but she'd passed away earlier that year. That was why Emily had decided to quit school and find work. Her plan to go south for a job had failed, and since she was pregnant, she had no choice but to cling to the Johnson family for survival. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson made a condition: Ethan had to return to school and retake the college entrance exam. If he didn't pass, they would never allow Emily to marry into their family. "No problem," Ethan said confidently. "I'm the kind of student who could get into Harvard or Yale. Passing the college exam again will be easy." Then he turned to Emily with an affectionate look. "Emily, wait for me. When I'm admitted to a top university, you and our baby will have a father who's a star student. We'll never lose to Sarah." Emily was deeply moved. "Ethan, I believe in you. Just hearing you say that makes everything I've gone through worth it." Two 18-year-olds, blinded by love, sealed their promise with naive words of devotion. Not long after, the court issued its final ruling. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson were ordered to compensate me with $50,000 for emotional damages. It was half of what I'd requested, but it was still enough. For a family of public employees like theirs, however, the blow was devastating, especially since the news about the laxative scandal had spread throughout their community. Mr. Johnson was fired from his job, and Ethan, who had previously run away, had stolen money from home. Now Emily was about to give birth, and their financial situation had become dire. The $50,000 penalty only made things worse. Under pressure from reality, Mrs. Johnson showed up at our new home, dragging along a friend to plead her case. "Mrs. Evans," she began in a falsely gentle tone, "our families have known each other for years. We acted out of anger, that's all. You know how bad things are for us now. For the sake of old friendship, can't you just let the compensation go?" My parents had never been the kind to bow when someone wronged their daughter. I was even more determined. I firmly refused and even warned Mrs. Johnson, "If you delay any longer and the court enforces the judgment, it won't look good. It might even affect your son's future and your grandchild's." Ethan was now repeating his senior year to retake the college exam, and my words hit Mrs. Johnson right where it hurt. Unwilling as she was, she had no choice but to pay the $50,000. Soon after, I left for Boston, where I began my new life as a university student. Ethan, meanwhile, returned to school, but he couldn't focus. Emily and Mrs. Johnson were constantly at each other's throats, and he was stuck in the middle, exhausted. "Mom, please stop picking on Emily," he pleaded. "She's pregnant. Can't you just let it go?" As their finances worsened, Mrs. Johnson's temper only grew harsher. That little tramp has been tattling to Julienne, hasn't she? Told her to stop distracting you from your studies, and now she's complaining about me?" The house was filled with shouting once again. Ethan sat helplessly at his desk, staring blankly at a test paper he couldn't finish. Time passed quickly. Another year slipped by in the chaos. When the new exam results were released, it was no surprise to anyone that Ethan had failed. He didn't even meet the minimum passing score. Around the same time, Emily gave birth to a baby girl. Mrs. Johnson's temper exploded like never before. She berated them endlessly, her voice echoing through the small, miserable house. Emily was furious. After a year of being tormented by Mrs. Johnson and suffering from postpartum depression, she was already on the brink of collapse. Mrs. Johnson, meanwhile, turned her anger on Ethan. "You useless boy," she shouted. "Didn't you say you'd bring home a top university diploma, and now you can only get into a community college?" They fought every single day, leaving the house in chaos. "How am I supposed to focus on studying like this?" Ethan shouted back, his face twisted with frustration. He was tormented. His so-called true love and his family were both suffocating him. "I really hate that day," he muttered bitterly. "Why didn't Sarah stop me at the train station? If she'd just stopped me, I never would have left. My life wouldn't have turned out like this." "What did you just say?" Mrs. Johnson lunged at him, grabbing his arm. "That girl Sarah came to the train station to look for you? I asked her back then, and she said she didn't know where you went. That little brat, she ruined you. I'm gonna find her." Emily let out a cold laugh. Her face was calm, but her mind had shattered completely. "So you regret it now, huh? You were the one who wanted to leave with me. Our daughter's already born, and now you're saying you wish Sarah had stopped you?" She stormed into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and charged back out, swinging wildly toward Ethan and Mrs. Johnson, ready to end everything once and for all. Ethan and his mother screamed in terror and ran in opposite directions. Emily, still young and fast, easily caught up to Mrs. Johnson and slashed down. Ethan froze in shock, too afraid to help. He turned and bolted toward the door, but in his panic, he tripped over himself, fell down the stairs, and hit his head. Everything went dark. When Mr. Johnson came home from work and saw the horrifying scene, blood everywhere, his wife on the floor, his son unconscious, he collapsed in despair. When Ethan opened his eyes again, he found himself lying in his old bedroom. He blinked in confusion. "Didn't I die in that car crash?" he murmured. Mr. Johnson rushed to his side, helping him sit up. "Son, are you okay?" "Dad," Ethan stammered. "You're alive? But I died after graduating from college, and you're supposed to be dead." Mr. Johnson's face turned red. "If I'm dead, then you'd be dead too. Your wife nearly killed your mother. Your mother's half dead in the hospital, and you didn't even get into college, you worthless brat." Ethan's jaw dropped. What are you talking about? Who stabbed Mom? Emily's dead. Sarah's dead too. And didn't I get accepted into a university in Boston? Mr. Johnson froze, completely alarmed. He looked at his son's dazed eyes and immediately panicked, calling for a doctor. Ethan lowered his gaze and suddenly noticed the old cell phone on his nightstand, a model from 15 years ago. When he turned it on, he realized the date matched his first year of college. He sat there in stunned silence before the truth hit him. He had been reborn too. In his previous life, after Sarah's death, Ethan and Emily hadn't lived happily for long. The truth was, after Emily ran south to work years ago, she hadn't been able to make a living and soon became a wealthy man's mistress. Later, she got pregnant, but that man didn't want the child. So Emily decided to return home, looking for a good man she could trick into taking responsibility. By then, Ethan's career was flourishing. He was successful, well-off, and known as a top graduate from Boston University. Emily targeted him immediately. But 10 years into their marriage, Ethan discovered the cruel truth. He'd been cheated on all along. The child he'd raised wasn't his. By that time, he was in his 40s, proud and bitter, refusing to bow his head even as his income plummeted. Emily constantly complained about their financial struggles, and Mrs. Johnson never stopped taunting her. But Emily wasn't the type to suffer quietly. She provoked Mrs. Johnson until one day, the older woman had a stroke and died. The marriage fell apart completely. They fought day and night over every little thing. Two people trapped in endless resentment. Then came the final blow. Their son fell ill, and during the medical checkup, Ethan discovered the boy's blood type didn't match his own. That was when he finally learned. The child he had loved for years wasn't his biological son. Ethan was so furious that he grabbed a knife and slashed at Emily. Then in panic, he jumped into his car and sped away. But fate wasn't kind. He crashed on the highway and died instantly. "Are you all right, son?" Mr. Johnson's worried voice broke through Ethan's daze. "You just woke up, so your mind's a bit foggy. Don't think too much right now." Once Ethan understood what had happened, excitement surged through him. Heaven had given him another chance. He could fix everything this time. Determined, he made up his mind to find Sarah again. In his previous life, he had mistaken a pebble for a gem, forgotten all the goodness Sarah had shown him, and fallen for Emily's lies. This time, he swore he would choose Sarah. But before he could leave, a knock came at the door. A police officer stood there. "Ethan Johnson? Since you're awake and in stable condition, we need you to come to the station to give a statement." The officer paused, eyeing the chaos still lingering in the home. "Also, your girlfriend is awake. She's in another hospital room and wants to see you." Emily sat on her hospital bed, staring at Ethan with cold hatred in her eyes. After stabbing Mrs. Johnson, she had fainted and been brought here by ambulance when Mr. Johnson called the police. "You useless piece of trash," she hissed. "You came back to life too?" Ethan's eyes darkened, flashing with murderous anger. "You filthy woman? You're alive too? Guess God's giving me the chance to finish what I started." Emily let out a bitter laugh. "I died by your hand once already, you coward. How dare you talk to me like that?" But she quickly calmed herself. Now wasn't the time to fight. The situation was already bad enough, and if she played her cards right, she might still get out of this mess. She had just given birth, her baby was still an infant, and she could claim postpartum depression. Mrs. Johnson hadn't died from her injuries. She was lucky to be alive. And everything could still be explained away. "Ethan," Emily said coolly, "go talk to the police and tell them I was suffering from postpartum depression. I know you're angry, but look at where things stand. Our daughter is your biological child, no matter what. What's the point of holding a grudge now? You're not that hotshot Boston student anymore. You're just a broke high school senior with no future. The family's dirt poor, but if you cooperate and agree to a settlement, I can get us some money to start over." Ethan sneered. "And where exactly are you getting that money? Daydreaming again?" Emily smirked, her confidence returning. "Sarah ruined your life. I can help you get revenge and money. If we blow this story up online, we can accuse her of ruining your future and demand compensation. I won't take a dime, it'll all go to you. Sarah's at Harvard now. Someone like her can't afford a scandal. She'll pay to protect her reputation." Ethan hesitated. Part of him still wanted to find Sarah, to somehow make peace, maybe even start over. Doing this would destroy any chance of that. After all, she had once been his wife. 15 years of shared life couldn't be erased so easily. Emily could read him like an open book. "Forget about getting back with Sarah," she said sharply. "If she didn't stop you from leaving with me back then, it means she's been reborn too. You can't seriously be too stupid to realize that. There's no way you two can end up together. You might as well get some money out of it while you can." Her words snapped Ethan out of his hesitation. She was right. By the time Sarah discovered their scheme, it was already too late. Ethan and Emily had launched a live stream titled, "Harvard Student Sarah Evans Destroyed My Family." Ethan sat before the camera with a sorrowful face. "I was once a top student, a hopeful candidate for Ivy League schools," he said. "Sarah was jealous of my grades, jealous that Emily and I were in love. Out of spite, she encouraged me to steal money from home and run away. It was my mistake for being weak, and I take responsibility for that. But Sarah didn't stop there. When I came back, she still wouldn't leave me alone. She falsely accused my father of poisoning her and forced him to pay compensation." His voice trembled with righteous indignation, while Emily sat beside him, tears streaming down her face. Their performance was flawless, and just like that, they set the internet ablaze. "My father worked under Sarah's father," Ethan said solemnly during his live stream, his voice full of fake remorse. "He was forced to confess to the police and got fired from his job. Please everyone, tell me, is that fair?" Then he showed screenshots of our old chat messages. Back when we were still close, childhood friends who had grown up together, there had been some affection between us. Before my rebirth, those chats really existed. Some were casual, some more intimate. And yes, I had once questioned him about Emily. But now, those words had all been twisted into evidence against me. Emily, clutching their baby girl in her arms, cried pitifully beside him. "Sarah," she pleaded through tears, "please have mercy on us. I don't want to bring up what you did to deceive me back then, but now I have a daughter. We need to raise her. Could you please return the money you falsely accused us of owing? I'm begging you." Soon, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson appeared as well, dressed in rags, looking pitiful, adding to the performance. The whole family wept and wailed, so miserable it almost seemed staged. It didn't take long before the media caught wind of the story. Reporters swarmed in, and the situation spiraled out of control. When I opened the news online, the internet was flooded with hate directed at me. My inbox was overflowing with insults, and the comment sections were filled with strangers calling me heartless and manipulative. Then I received a message from Ethan. "Sarah, I know you were reborn too. But this time you didn't stop me and Emily. You let me ruin my future. Don't you think that's partly your fault? You know how successful I became in my previous life. Now I need money to start over, to study again. You already took $50,000 from my family before. Giving me another $50,000 isn't too much to ask, right? After all, we were married for years. You destroyed me. You should compensate me. It's not even a lot of money. Just pay me, and I'll disappear for good. If not, I'll drag your name through the mud. You might have a bright future ahead of you, but I've got nothing to lose. If I go down, I'll make sure you go down with me." The sheer shamelessness of the man made my skin crawl. I had thought that in this life, I'd never have to deal with him again. Yet somehow, Ethan Johnson had been reborn too. Not long after my parents called me, my father's voice trembled with fury. "What the hell is wrong with that Johnson boy? Why won't he leave us alone? Are you okay, sweetheart?" "I'm fine, Dad," I said, my voice calm. "Don't worry, I'll take care of this." To deal with Ethan's slander, I went straight to the police. They acted quickly. His live stream was shut down, and the police issued an official statement clarifying the situation. They confirmed that Mr. Johnson had, in fact, poisoned my food. However, since Ethan's words mixed truth with lies, they couldn't pursue defamation charges for everything. Claims like Sarah was jealous of me and she ruined my life out of spite were harder to prove legally. So Ethan stuck to his story, stubborn to the end. After being fined and warned by the authorities, he simply opened new accounts. In his next streams, he continued twisting the truth. "She was obsessed with me," he declared. "She hurt me because she loved me too much." The drama brought in a flood of viewers and donations. He even began implying disgusting things, hinting at fabricated romantic incidents between us in our youth and making up details about his so-called passionate love life with Emily. The internet lapped it up, gossiping endlessly, and the donations poured in. For a while, he made quite a bit of money from it. Meanwhile, I was busy with exams and didn't have time to deal with his nonsense. But once my finals were over, I decided it was time to end this once and for all. Before I could take any action, however, Emily contacted me first. When we met face to face, she looked at me coldly but without hostility. "You've been reborn too, haven't you?" she asked. I didn't bother pretending. I stared straight at her and replied, "Yes." Emily didn't deny it either. "So am I," she said calmly. "But this time, I have no intention of being your enemy. Your father's a high-ranking government official after all." "You're a prestigious university student now," Emily said with a bitter smile. "I know I'm no match for you, but you've already made enemies, haven't you?" She laughed softly, her expression weary and resigned. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I really don't have any other choice. When I was reborn, I had already stabbed Ethan's mother. Even though I have a history of mental illness and wasn't held criminally responsible, the Johnsons wanted to throw me into a psychiatric hospital. I had to cooperate with him to survive. And now, my daughter is still in his hands." She stopped speaking for a moment. I didn't interrupt. I knew the real reason she'd come wasn't pity or confession. It was negotiation. "Sure enough," she continued. "Sarah, I want to work with you. I can help you expose Ethan and clear your name. In exchange, I need you to help me escape him and win custody of my daughter." I took a sip of my coffee and looked at her coolly. "And why should I believe you?" I asked. "You were the other woman who stole the boy I liked when we were in school. Later, you became the woman who stole my husband. Because of you, both my child and I died. You and I have a blood-deep grudge. Emily, why on earth should I help you?" She froze, her cracked lips trembling, her face pale as paper. The Johnson family had made plenty of money off their livestream donations, but she hadn't seen a single cent. Her skin was sickly yellow, her body thin and frail. Her eyes were dull from exhaustion, and I noticed faint scars, both old and new, on her arms. She'd clearly been abused for a long time. "I know I wronged you," Emily said hoarsely. "But you should also know. I didn't have it easy either. You think dying in childbirth was cruel? You should be grateful. You didn't have to live through the 15 years I did. 15 years of misery. In the end, Ethan killed me with his own hands. I don't want to end up like that again. Please, Sarah, help me. I just want to take my daughter and get her away from that house. If you agree, I'll disappear from your life forever, I swear." Her voice shook, tears streaming down her face. "Please, I'm begging you. In my past life, I lost one child already. I can't lose my daughter, too. You almost became a mother once. You understand what that love feels like, don't you? I would never risk my child's life." Her words were desperate, sincere even, but I remained unmoved. Seeing that, Emily clenched her jaw, then dropped to her knees in front of me. "Sarah," she whispered, "if you won't agree, then I'll kneel here until you do." I sighed softly. Then I leaned down, took her rough, trembling hands in mine, and said quietly, "Your health isn't good. If you kneel for too long, you'll collapse. And if that happens, how will you get your revenge?" Her eyes widened in disbelief. "So, you'll help me?" she asked nervously, tears still clinging to her lashes. I nodded. But you'll have to do exactly as I say. The following night, Ethan went live again. This time, I went live too. I chose a popular social media platform, set up my own live stream, and prepared to publicly respond to his accusations. I even spent a hefty sum hiring journalists and influential bloggers to share the broadcast widely. The more people who saw it, the better. Ethan cared about his reputation more than anything. He could never stand being humiliated in front of the world. In today's online world, people crave drama. They don't care who's right or wrong, they just want entertainment. Within 30 minutes, my stream had drawn over 10 million viewers across multiple platforms. The interviewer began, "Miss Evans, there are claims that years ago, you encouraged two of your classmates, Ethan and Emily, to run away from home. Is that true?" "Absolutely not," I said calmly. "It's the opposite, actually. I went to the train station that day to stop them. I begged them to come back and focus on their exams, but they wouldn't listen. I told the story of that summer, presenting it from my perspective. The perspective of a friend who cared about their future, who tried and failed to save them from ruining their lives." The audience was captivated. Many viewers began calling Ethan and Emily foolish, mocking them for running away instead of taking their college entrance exams, only to come back in shame later. The online commentators I had hired flooded the comments section, guiding public opinion. Soon, people were even circulating Ethan's old letter to his mother, the one he'd left behind before running away. It painted a perfect picture of recklessness, and now, the world finally saw it for what it was. Mrs. Johnson had been going around everywhere complaining and gossiping, spreading her own family's disgrace. Because of that, many neighbors had witnessed what had happened, and several even came forward to testify for me. During my live stream, I carefully laid out the truth, that Mr. Johnson had secretly put laxatives into my breakfast, hoping to make me sick so I'd fail my college entrance exams. Before this broadcast, I had already requested the original police audio recording of Mr. Johnson's confession. His cruel words and mocking laughter echoed through the live feed. The audience was furious. Comments flooded in demanding that he be thrown in prison. When the timing felt right, I let a few tears slip down my cheek and said softly, "Ethan Johnson not only defamed and humiliated me online, he also threatened to extort money from me." Then I displayed the screenshots of Ethan's text messages demanding payment. "If anyone still doubts my story," I said, looking straight at the camera, "then let's settle this once and for all. Tonight, I'll go meet Ethan and Emily in person, live, and we'll make everything clear." Meanwhile, at the Johnson house, Emily was holding her daughter, crying hysterically. "Please, Mom, stop hitting me. I was wrong, I know I was wrong. Dinner was a little salty tonight, I'll fix it, just don't hit me again." I had told Emily earlier to provoke the Johnsons that night, and she did exactly as planned. She stumbled toward the room where Ethan was live streaming and screamed, "Ethan, come here and look! This is your daughter. Your real daughter." Some of the viewers watching Ethan's live stream heard the commotion and started asking in the comments what was happening. Ethan instantly froze. The phrase, "real daughter," hit him like a thunderbolt. Panicked that the live stream audience might catch on to something, he quickly ended the stream. His viewership had already dropped sharply that evening. There were fewer viewers, almost no donations, and many people were even cursing him out in the chat. His temper, already foul, exploded. Furious, he grabbed his belt, stormed out of the room, and dragged Emily into the living room. Mr. Johnson sat on the couch watching TV, pretending not to notice a thing. The belt cracked through the air again and again, striking Emily's body. She clutched her daughter tightly, screaming in agony. The child, terrified, burst into tears. Mrs. Johnson clapped her hands and sneered. "Serves you right, you little tramp. You seduced my son. You deserve every hit." Still, she loved her granddaughter enough to fear Ethan might harm the baby. She snatched the crying girl from Emily's arms. Losing her child sent Emily into a frenzy. She screamed and thrashed wildly. "Don't take my baby, please. Give her back. Mom, please, she's my daughter. Ethan, I was wrong, I'll listen to you, I always have. You told me to run away south, I did. You told me to lie about Sarah and demand hush money, I did that too. Please stop hitting me, I'm begging you." Her cries only made him angrier. The more she pleaded, the harder he hit her. What none of them knew was that a hidden camera had been quietly recording the entire scene and streaming it live. At first, only a few people were watching. But soon, the video spread like wildfire. Thousands of viewers joined, their comments filling the chat. "Oh my God, he's gonna kill her! Call the police right now. This whole family is sick. The parents are just sitting there doing nothing." So this is the truth all along. Sarah was innocent. Those monsters lied about everything. How can people like this still exist? Where's the justice? Within minutes, the story blew up across every platform. I arrived at the Johnsons' house with a small group of reporters and volunteers. People who'd seen the live stream were already gathered outside, shouting in outrage. When they heard Emily was being beaten inside, they didn't hesitate. They kicked the door open. The noise startled the Johnsons. Mrs. Johnson turned around, clutching the screaming baby tightly. I rushed forward and, taking advantage of her confusion, pulled the child from her arms. Then I stepped back behind the group of bystanders for safety. The men with me quickly restrained Ethan, who was still raging with the belt in his hand, while the women rushed in to help Emily, who was bleeding and barely conscious. "Who the hell are you people?" Ethan roared from the floor as the men held him down. "Who said you could break into my house? I'll call the cops on you." But this time, the police didn't come to protect him. They were already on their way, and the evidence was being streamed live to millions. I gave a cold laugh and lifted my phone. "Don't worry," I said evenly. "I already called the police for you." Ethan's eyes went red with rage. "You, Sarah Evans. How dare you? You ruined my life. You owe me. You'll pay for what you did to me." I pretended to flinch, stepping back in mock fear. The people I'd brought with me immediately moved into position. Some shielded me while others kept recording. After all, their job was clear: expose the true face of this man to the world. Tonight, his whole family would be utterly disgraced. "Stop filming, you hear me? Stop!" Ethan shouted wildly, his voice cracking. "I'll sue every single one of you." I ignored his howls. Hugging Emily's baby close, I guided her outside just as the ambulance I'd called arrived. Emily was in terrible shape, her face swollen, her ribs bruised, blood on her shirt. If we had been a few minutes later, she might not have survived. When I'd asked her to provoke the Johnsons, I'd only meant for her to anger them a little, to take a few hits at most, enough to expose them publicly. I hadn't expected Ethan to lose all control and beat her so savagely. "You didn't have to go that far?" I murmured, as the paramedics lifted her onto the stretcher. "Getting yourself hurt this badly, it wasn't worth it." Emily forced a weak, crooked smile. "No, it had to look real. If my injuries weren't serious enough, our plan would have failed." I didn't know what to say to that. After a long pause, I sighed softly. "You've been through enough. Just rest. I'll take care of your daughter." Emily tried to open her mouth to thank me, but pain stopped her. Her lips trembled, her eyes rolled back, and she fainted. The shrill wail of police sirens echoed from behind us. I turned to glance once at the Johnson house, now surrounded by a sea of flashing lights and angry onlookers, then looked away without hesitation. I hired a lawyer immediately to handle Emily's case. With all the evidence we had, video footage, witness statements, and medical reports, it was more than enough to convict Ethan. The court ruled that Ethan Johnson was guilty of intentional assault causing injury. He was sentenced to 3 years and 2 months in prison. But that wasn't the only crime he'd committed. His online slander, his lies, his defamation campaign, they were classified as serious digital harassment and reputation damage. It was almost certain he'd spend the better part of his life behind bars. When Emily was discharged from the hospital weeks later, I brought her daughter to see her. She was still thin and pale, but her eyes looked brighter, calmer. She smiled faintly when she saw me. "I grew up an orphan," she said quietly. "I always dreamed of having a child of my own. In my last life, I had too many miscarriages. The doctors said if I didn't carry that pregnancy to term, I'd never have a baby again. That's why I stayed with Ethan. I thought maybe if I could give birth, it would be worth it. But I was wrong. I made a lot of mistakes." Her voice trembled. "He attacked me in the end too. Thank God my son was in the hospital that day and didn't see it happen." I let out a long breath. People like him, they're cruel, but pitiful too. Forget the past, Emily. What's done is done. You have another chance now. Live for the present. She nodded and smiled faintly. I plan to take my daughter and move south. Start over. I won't be back. I nodded in return, meaning to wish her and her child safety and peace. But before I could speak, the hospital door suddenly burst open. Mr. Johnson stormed in, wild-eyed, waving a knife. I knew it, he screamed. You two filthy whores, you worked together to destroy my son. He didn't get another word out. The bodyguards I'd hired lunged forward, pinned him to the ground, and disarmed him. Emily clutched her daughter tightly, her face white as paper. My hands were shaking too. Even in broad daylight, in a public hospital, this madman had burst in to kill us. Thankfully, I'd expected something like this, and had arranged for 24-hour protection. The guards dragged him out and called the police again. By the end of the day, Mr. Johnson was arrested and sent to prison for attempted assault. That was the end of it. The scandal finally died down, and the rumors faded away. I returned to campus, ready to focus on my studies again. One afternoon, I came home to find Mrs. Johnson kneeling outside my door, crying and begging for me to visit her son in prison. I hesitated, then agreed. Maybe I just wanted to see what that despicable man had to say this time. When I entered the visitor's room, Ethan's eyes lit up. Sarah, he said, his voice shaking, please, help me. Get me a lawyer. Help me get out of here. Everything I did, it was all because of Emily. It was Emily, Ethan said frantically, his voice trembling. She was the one who told me to do it. She manipulated me. But Sarah, I still love you. I was wrong, I swear. In my past life she cheated on me, made a fool of me, and I was too blind to see it. Please, give me another chance. I'll start over. I'll make things right. I looked at the man in front of me, his face pale, his eyes wild, his desperation dripping from every word, and all I felt was satisfaction. Ethan Johnson had been given a second life. A clean slate. He could have chosen any path, rebuilt his future, earned an honest living, done something good with his time. But no. He clung to me like a parasite, obsessed, destructive, refusing to let go. There are thousands of ways to start over, I said quietly, meeting his crazed gaze. You could have made something of yourself. You could have become someone better. Instead, you chose to destroy me again. Don't say you love me, Ethan. The only person you've ever loved is yourself. But he didn't even seem to hear me. He just kept muttering under his breath, over and over. Find me a lawyer. My life is ruined. My life is ruined. I'd had enough. I stood, turned my back on him, and walked out of the prison's visitation room without looking back. Outside, I ran into Mrs. Johnson. Her hair was messy, her clothes unwashed, her eyes vacant. She wandered aimlessly near the prison gates, mumbling to herself, My son's life is over. My poor son. What do I do now? The Johnson family, every one of them, had finally met the fate they deserved. They'd sown evil, and now they were reaping the harvest. As I headed toward my car, I spotted a familiar figure approaching from down the road. Emily, pulling a suitcase with one hand and holding her daughter in the other. I paused and asked, Are you here to see him one last time? She shook her head. No, I came to see you. To see me? I frowned. Emily reached into her coat and pulled out a red envelope, handing it to me with trembling fingers. I stared at it for a moment before realizing what it was. I shook my head. It's not for you, she said quickly. It's for the child. Why? I asked softly. Why are you giving this to me? She gave a weary smile, her eyes glistening with tears. I don't know. Maybe it's because, for once, I want to do something right. Or maybe it's because I pity that little girl, your daughter from the life before this one, who never got the chance to be born. I didn't respond. My throat felt tight, and for a moment I couldn't speak. Finally, I said quietly, Take your daughter south. Raise her well. Don't let her repeat our mistakes. Emily's eyes filled with tears as she nodded. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. I waved my hand dismissively, turning toward my car. The sun was blazing overhead, warm and blinding. As I opened the car door, I felt the weight of the past finally lift. My life, at long last,